Today is Wednesday, November 17th, and this is the Henry Hudson School Board of Education meeting. Can I get a motion to open the meeting, please? Can I get a second? All in favor? Aye. At this time, we will move into executive session for the purpose of collective negotiations under the Taylor Law, medical, financial, credit, or employment history of a particular person or corporation, or matters leading to the appointment or employment history of a particular person or corporation, or matters leading to the appointment or employment or promotion or demotion or discipline or suspension or removal of a particular person or corporation. Can I have a motion to move into executive, please? May I have a second? All in favor? Aye. All right, so we will be back at approximately 7:00. Good evening. Tonight is Wednesday, November 17th, and this is the Hendrick Hudson School Board of Education meeting. Can we rise for the pledge, please?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The board has just left their executive session and is now back in our public session. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda as stated, please?
So moved.
Can I get a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody have anything to pull from the consent agenda this evening? All right, can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda as stated? So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
So that brings us to our items removed from the consent agenda, and tonight we have two items that were removed from the consent agenda, both of which are donations. Can you guys hear me in the back? No. Okay, good. The first donation is from Pat Gonda for a Nikon Coolpix T5100 camera and case, and also Nikon Coolpix S9700 camera for the rechargeable battery, etc. Thank you very much to the Gonda family for this donation. I'm sure it will be much appreciated. And the second donation is from Holtec International. They donated a QuickCool AC Portacool unit, which is a portable air conditioning unit that can be used for various situations in athletics. So that will be much appreciated in August and in the later spring. Thank you very much to our new partners, Holtec. Can I get a motion to approve those two donations, please? Can I get a second? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, so that brings us to our superintendent's report.
Good evening, everyone. We've got a couple updates on our agenda, but I want to start off script by congratulating our girls varsity volleyball team, who will be representing Section 1 in the Lower Hudson region at the New York State Volleyball Tournament this weekend. They will play, they're in the Final Four. They will play basically all day Saturday, starting at 9 in the morning. They'll play a round robin, so they'll play the other three teams at least once. And then the two teams with the best record from that round robin are playing the championship match on Sunday, also in Glens Falls. So the volleyball team will be heading north late Friday morning. They're going to have a team breakfast, and I believe the high school is planning a pep rally and a goodbye rally for them as they head up the thruway. So information on the games will be released shortly. We're trying to determine if they will be live streamed and what the criteria will be to watch those games. I know I'll be up there with our high school principal and athletic director and some staff, so hopefully the team is successful. 2 years ago, they made it all the way to the Final Four, but they did not make it to the championship match. So our volleyball team has a long storied history of success, and they continue that this year. And it seems to be like every August I catch Coach Swertfager in the gym working with the girls, and I ask her what the prospect of the season is. And every year she tells me without flinching that it might be a rebuilding year. It's always a rebuilding year. And here they are, one of the four best teams in the state, and the team and the girls have represented our school community with dignity and pride, and we wish them a lot of success, and hopefully they'll bring home the championship. So before Friday, we'll release information on how you could go to the match if you wish, or how you could watch virtually. So good luck to them. Getting back on our script, earlier today we launched a community-wide survey for our strategic plan. That email with the link went out at about 2 o'clock. We will also send the opportunity for staff to respond to that survey tomorrow. The survey will be live until December 3rd. And there are questions about really the future of the district and what the interest is of our school community and how we move forward. That's a really important piece of data, or a set of data that we're looking for so we can build our next set of initiatives over the next handful to 8 years as we plan for life, not only after Indian Point, but what the future of our district will hold. With that comes the second update I put on the agenda, and it's a handout that we posted online, which is a spreadsheet of our district demographics. This is a really important document for our school community to understand, because this is a story of who we were and a reality of who we are right now. Over the last 11 years, our enrollment has dwindled about 10%. Over the last 11 years, our students that are economically disadvantaged has almost doubled. Over the last 11 years, our ethnicity and our student makeup has significantly changed. Our school community has gone through a great amount of change since 2011. And it's important that we all understand that, because it's this data and it's this reality of the 21-22 school year that hopefully drives our initiatives over the next number of years. I've been a part of many conversations, focus groups, met with families and community members about the future of our district. I've learned a lot about what people desire. I've learned a lot about what people aspire our district to be able to do and provide for kids. But it's important that we look going forward and not in the rearview mirror. Because I've had conversations with folks who, want to revisit the good old days, or remember when we used to do this, or I remember when we were District 3, or so on and so forth. And it's important to understand that we are a much different district today than we were 5 years ago, and certainly than we were 10 years ago. And that's why an initiative like going through a strategic plan and asking for input is really, really important to drive the future of our district, because we are no longer who we were, and we need to continue to prepare for a changing future. And this data are really, really important for us to use and to ground ourselves as we move forward. We are not who we were. That's just the reality. It's a function of people who move into the community, people who move out. But we are a shrinking district, and I think it's important that we understand this information and use it for planning purposes. So I wanted to make sure I shared it. All of this data, just so you know, comes from BEDS Day. BEDS Day is a universal reporting day across all public school districts in New York State. BEDS Day is typically a day in early October after the school year gets settled. So these are pieces of data that we report to the state education department. So these aren't internal numbers, these are external numbers that the state asks us for. So we make sure that each year the data are credible and that we're comparing apples to apples. So I wanted to make sure that the board and the community had this information as we go through this school year planning to implement the strategic plan, because this is who we are, and it's really, really important we understand who we are when we're going to discuss initiatives, and certainly this group, the board, will discuss funding those initiatives based on this information.
Can you just tell the public what the acronym BEDS stands for?
Oh boy, Basic Education Data System, I believe. It's basically the computer in the sky in Albany that every school district, all 700 plus school districts, send their information to on that particular day. So it's a snapshot of school districts, it's a snapshot of who's being educated in New York schools. And they pick October because there's usually a lot of transition and moving parts in September. But that's typically what Meds Day is, and that's why it's an important reporting day for us. And Carmen at the end of the table is chiefly responsible for getting that information to the state, and that's often laborious, but this is a really good snapshot, an accurate snapshot of who we are in each October of these school years.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions about the enrollment data? Okay.
And my last update is regarding decommissioning of Indian Point and the work that Holtec is completing. Last week, I reported that the school district was awarded $500,000 to work with the state and other agencies for decommissioning. Those conversations have begun. We're going to continue to work with the state and federal agencies to identify opportunities to use those funds for air quality monitoring, for water monitoring, and to make sure that while decommissioning continues, particularly the demolition of some of the structures at Indian Point, that those dollars are used to ensure health and safety protocols, and that all of our schools, but in particular BV, is equipped with real-time reporting information to ensure our staff and our students' safety at that school. So it didn't take long for the state to reach out to us to start that conversation on how we could use those dollars. As I said before, and I want to reiterate again, those dollars are held in escrow by the state. It's not a check, it's not a gift. It doesn't sit in an account code in our district. We need to work with the state and receive state approval to use those dollars, and then they would release them, much like a grant, much like some of our state grants. We fill out an application, we submit it, and then they release the funds as they go. So I'm reporting on this because the announcement of the $500,000, while maybe it wasn't all that we thought we would receive, but is still significant standing alone, it wasn't it wasn't just a press release, and it wasn't just a gift to the district. They have the committee has followed up in short order to make sure that we're talking about the potential uses and making sure that the specialists on behalf of the state and federal government are advising us along the way. So we'll continue to keep everyone apprised.
Thank you.
And with that, I'll turn it over to our team. I know Enrique is going to lead our main presentation, but I'll turn it over to Lisa and Margaret for some quick updates.
Good evening, everyone. So I'll follow on a little bit of what Joe started with strategic plan. We may have sent the survey out today, but we also began our focus groups this week. Lisa Anderson and I were responsible for coordinating the groups. That was an interesting experience for us, organizing the questions, but I think we had a good time putting it together and overseeing everything. I'd like to thank everybody that participated. We started with actually some students that have been interviewed, and also our teachers. So thank you to everybody who both participated and those that hosted the focus group sessions. Outside of that, we're busy with the Princeton plan, moving forward with our K-5 conversations. Lots of professional development going on right now in the district. And I will turn this over to Lisa.
Hello, everyone. About the same as Margaret, we've been working on strategic plan. Carol and I were able to work on some questions that went out in the survey for the community, the students, faculty, anybody else that's taking the survey. We also have really participated as a small group, which has been very nice and enlightening. Princeton plan continues to happen. We are meeting with teachers, we're meeting related service people, really trying to get a lot of input, make sure that we have everything in place that we need. Talking about packing, that's huge right now, is what are we packing, what are we taking to the next level. And we are as well doing special ed professional development that's very targeted for IEPs and transition. That's our indicator this year. So every year we have an indicator for the state, and we are indicator 13, which is our transition for students from middle school to high school to post-21. Whether it's work, whether it's college, so we're doing a lot of professional development on that. So that's what we're doing.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I want to introduce here the partner of O'Connor Davis, who are our external auditors. This is Robert Daniel. Mr. Daniel is going to take us through a presentation to discuss some of the findings and some of the numbers from our past audit that the board approved last week. Thank you, Rob. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you, Enrique. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me present the audit results for the Henry-Cutzon Central School District for the fiscal year ended June 30, 2021. Again, before I begin, I just wanted to thank Enrique and the entire business office for their professionalism, their audit readiness, and really being available to us throughout the entire audit process. Also wanted to thank the audit committee. They're very involved with the school's finances. We had a great conversation going over the audit results. So I prepared a PowerPoint rather than going through the 100-page audit documentation. So we could just touch upon the summary overview of the fiscal year. So if you turn to page 2, thank you. All right, so quickly we'll go through a quick summary overview, and then we'll spend a little time in the general fund going through some results, your actual results compared to your final budgets. And there's a few charts in there to show you some 3-year comparison of your financial results, some debt service requirements, and then we'll close with overall financial health of the district. Next page. So before we begin, what we call our deliverables, the first 3 pages of the audit report are what we call the independent auditor's report. Those 3 pages are what we opine on. We issue what is termed an unmodified opinion. An unmodified opinion is referred to as a clean opinion. It's the highest level of assurance that an entity can receive. And it basically states that the financial statements present fairly the financial position of the district at a specific point in time, as of June 30, 2021, and in accordance with the accounting standards, in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States of America. We also issue, because the school district does receive and expend in excess of $750,000 in federal funds, there's also a report on compliance. We have to make sure that those monies are spent accordingly. And then also included in the packet is what we call a management letter. I'm happy to report that we didn't identify any control deficiencies that we would raise to a significant deficiency or material weakness. We had a couple of comments, but nothing rose to that level. Again, the business office was very cooperative and no disagreements with the business office. Next page. Page 4 is your general fund, which is your main operating account. It's a high-level summary. You can see there are 5 columns. The first column is the original budget, and that's what the voters approved back in the spring of 2020. Again, from a high level, your aggregate revenues were a little over $79 million. You had expenditures of $77.8 million. You end up with an excess of $1.1 million. When you factor in transfers to other funds, particularly to the capital projects fund to cover those capital needs, you come down to the net change in fund balance. You see the bracket, $3.5 million. And that there's 2 components to the $3.5 million. Again, about $409,000 of prior year, what we call encumbrances or commitments that you entered into in the prior year. You just didn't receive the goods or services. Those automatically rolled to the subsequent year and then the budget. More importantly, $3,134,034 is what the district designated or used from its own fund balance to balance the budget. And you can say that's providing a form of property tax relief. If the district can use those funds, obviously you would have to raise taxes. Final budget, you can see not much change in the aggregate, slight change in the revenues, slight changes in the expenditures, there's some reclassification, but overall, you still come down to that net change in fund balance of the bracket, $3.5 million. So again, if everything went according to your budget, to your plan, you would have expected to use $3.5 million of your own money. Third column is what actually happened. You can see your revenues came in at $80.6 million, $1.4 million better than your final budget. And you see that you had expenditure savings to the tune of $5.2 million. And a lot of this related to COVID, which, happened for probably the last quarter of the year, or at the beginning of the year, sorry. So you take your revenues, subtract your expenses, you have an excess of $4.5 million. You factor, you back out your transfers, and you come down where your revenues exceeded expenditures by $4 million. You're able to add that to your opening fund balance of $16 million, and you end the year at $20 million, and talk about the $20 million in a couple of slides. Next slide. So on page 5, there's a lot of numbers here, and I'll just briefly touch upon this. These are, so how did you get there? And I mentioned that you had favorable variances on the revenue side of $1.4 million. These are about 6, 7, or 8 categories. Again, property taxes. Property tax revenue is up about $3 million, but again, the school district remained within the property tax cap formula. So in fact, the district hadn't exceeded the tax cap since it was enacted back in 2011. So over the past 10 years, the district has not exceeded the tax cap. Hand in hand with property taxes, the school tax relief reimbursement. That's the STAR program. That's based on population, and that provides homeowners, either decreases their assessments or provides a refund. So when that goes down, it puts the burden back on the taxpayers. More importantly is the next one, your pilots. These are payments in lieu of taxes. You do have a pilot with Entergy, and that was the owners of the Indian Point Power Plant. And this pilot, you can see revenue is down about $2.6 million compared to the prior year. And there was an agreement that says this pilot revenue will keep going down once the nuclear power plants are closed, and that's occurred. So the districts actually saw a reduction of about 30% this year, and that's expected to be, I believe, 60% next year. So that's something to keep an eye out, and we'll talk about that. And then just quickly, non-property taxes and sales tax. Sales tax is up about $260,000 compared to the prior year, but you can see it actually almost more than doubled compared to your budget. So, you didn't know what was going to happen with COVID, but obviously consumers are still spending. Westchester County did enact a 1% increase back in 2019, which obviously still continues today. So, every district, every municipality takes advantage of that. Quickly, basic tuition, these are out-of-district students that utilize NHUD schools. Again, this revenue line is up over $400,000 compared to the prior year. On the downside, use of money property is just another fancy word for interest earnings. You can see that interest earnings are $22,000 compared to almost $188,000 last year. So obviously, due to COVID, interest rates are at an all-time low. So that's expected, I guess. And state aid is pretty comparable to the prior year, but consistent with what was anticipated when the budget was developed. That's good. So we did the same for the expense side. Again, I'll touch on some of these. Are about 8 or 9 items here. Your operation and maintenance of plant, that's up about $200,000 compared to the prior year, but obviously less than the budget. There were salary increases as well as purchases to meet COVID-19 protocols. Your teaching regular school is down slightly. Again, there was some teachers that were moved between schools. There were step and grade changes, resulting in a little decline in that area. Your programs for students with disabilities, again, increase in salaries for students with disabilities, more special education students that attended BOCES programs versus private schools. Pupil transportation, consistent with the prior year, but about $775,000 less than the budget. Again, this was due to remote schoolings and no sporting events because of COVID-19. Teachers' retirement system, paying into their pension, the rates are up about 7 or 8%, and that results in an increase in the current year compared to the prior year. Health insurance is up slightly, although the district did anticipate premium increases of about 6 to 8%. When it was all said and done, the realization was about 2% increase, so just under 2%. Debt service, this is your principal and interest on your outstanding bonds. That's pretty much consistent. Actually, it dropped. The district did do some refunding and refinancing of bonds and was able to save interest costs, not this year, not only this year, but over the next 5 years. You'll see a reduction in interest costs. Next slide. Next slide is just a graph, and I just wanted to point out the 3 years comparison. You can see that on the expense side, in 2020, expenses were down compared to the previous year. And then in 2021, you can see that expenses are back up compared to the 2019 levels. Revenues have been exceeding the expenditures, which has allowed the district to accumulate these funds and have some fund balance that we'll talk about. Next page. Next page is just a pie chart to give you, the top is your sources of revenue and the bottom are your sources of expenditures. Again, the top 3 drivers of your budget on the top, your real property taxes and your STAR program make up about 58% of the budget. Your paying in lieu of taxes make up about 30% of the budget. And again, as I caution you, this is going to drop based on the agreements that you have in place. And the third item is your state aid, which is a little over 8%. And those are the top 3 drivers on the revenue side. Down below is your expenses, your expenditures. You can see that your instructional costs make up about 55% of the budget. The related employee benefits make up about 25% of the budget. And what we call general support, which are your administrative costs, make up about 9% of the budget. Next page. Next page is I talked about you ended the year with a fund balance of $20 million. It's a 3-year comparison. You can see from 19 to 20, fund balance went up $5 million. And from 20 to 21, fund balance went up $4 million. The school district is limited by New York State law to have unassigned fund balance of 4% of the ensuing year's adopted budget. So the school district is currently in excess of this limit, but this is due to the closure of the Indian Point nuclear plant. Again, this, as I mentioned, this will result in a reduction of revenues over the next few years, and so the school districts may have to utilize some of that fund balance to balance the budget due to these revenue shortfalls. So yes, you know, the school district had a good year, but I caution that because we don't know what's going to happen down the road. Next page. Page 10, again, the school district does operate other funds. Just briefly, they do have an active capital projects fund. The district did spend almost $2.77 million in 2021. There's approximately 14 active projects. The fund does show a deficit of $17.3 million. However, you do have short-term bond anticipation notes that fund that deficit. Not to get technical, but short-term bond anticipation notes are not recognized as revenue until you either convert them to a bond or you pay them down. And I understand that, I believe Enrique has informed me that you negotiated a bond or you're going to negotiate a bond, and interest rates are extremely low, like under 0.5%. So that's good news. You do have an active special aid fund to account for all your federal and state programs. As I mentioned before, because you did exceed the threshold, we have to do a compliance audit to make sure that those funds were spent in accordance with the grant terms. And again, no findings as far as compliance. You also have a school lunch fund, a special purpose fund, and a debt service fund, which will end the year with positive results. Next page. Page 11, this is just a snapshot of your debt service requirements. So the district does have $11.4 million of outstanding bonds, and these are payable over time. District also has an installment purchase debt, which is a lease, if you will, $1.4 million, energy performance contract debt of a little over $1 million, and short-term bond anticipation notes of $19.3 million. I just wanted to point out on the top in the chart there, you can see that in next year, 2 of those bonds will drop off. So that's about $2.5 million. And additionally, going into 2023, another $2.5 million will drop off. So you'll have $5 million that drop off over the next 2 years. However, you are financing that short-term band. So it'll drop off, but some will come back on, but much lower than these interest rates. And then the last page, 12, is just, again, the overall financial health The school district is in good financial health, and that could be credited to you folks, the district board, and the administration. As I mentioned before, you have remained within the 2% property tax cap since it was enacted back in 2011, and you're also dealing with the closure of the Indian Point. The district always looks for expenditure reductions and savings, either strategic use of BOCES aided services, you've entered into energy performance contracts, and you did a recent debt refunding to reduce your overall debt service costs, as I mentioned, not only in the current year, but over the next 5 years. So why is all that important? Again, it's going to assist you when you come to compute your tax levy. Obviously, it'll impact your credit rating. As you can see, I think you went out and got an S&P rating with an A+ stable rating, and Moody's had initially issued an A1 credit rating. So because the credit rating is so good, you're able to have a lower interest rate on any future borrowings. And I think that's seen in this closing of the recent bond. And again, having the fund balance and the financial health is going to help you in budget planning and future considerations with regard to the closure of the Indian Point. So again, I said you had a good fund balance, but you have to manage those revenue shortfalls that may happen not only next year, but over the next few years to balance future budgets. So you will need some of your unassigned fund balance to do that.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions or comments about the presentation? Go ahead.
Rob, thanks. In 2019, in July of 2019, the district received a controller's audit that basically said we are not prepared in terms of fund balance to deal with the impact of Indian Point's closure. I know you're not the controller's office, and you deal with an entirely different set of our finances, but are we on the right track? Are we, if you were to advise us, should we be doing more? What would be your assessment today of what the controller told us 2.5 years ago?
I did read that report, and obviously the district does a 5-year plan, and the controller felt that some of the numbers were unrealistic over the 5-year. I can't really advise you at that aspect, but I think from an annual standpoint, we could refine those numbers and kind of get them a more accurate picture. I don't know if you can do that over the next 5 years out. Certainly over the next year or two, we can refine those numbers to make sure that with the reduction in those pilots, that you still have a balanced budget.
Thank you.
Regarding Indian Point and the loss of revenue there, even though there's an accumulation of some additional fund balance, would you agree that, and even with change in expenditures and revenue, that this community could expect to see much greater percentage increase in property taxes than surrounding communities, given the Indian Point situation?
That's a good question. That would be up to, the state is also trying to help out, so you may get some state funding. So if that happens, then you may not see it, but potentially yes. You could have, obviously you have to balance your budget, so that's the balancing factor is your property tax. So if you do have shortfalls, then you would have to make it up.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you. All right, so next, Enrique, we're going to review the budget development calendar for the year.
Always in our last board meeting here before Thanksgiving, we reviewed the budget calendar. We're starting the budget calendar as soon as January 5th. In the January 5th board meeting, what we do is an initial budget presentation and the multi-year budget projection. Basically, we give a broad overview of what we expect this year. So far, I've gotten very few information. The only information I have gotten is TRS. Even though the market did extremely well in the last 5 years, they always average the last 5 years, TRS decided to increase the rate of return. So I was expecting, as well as everyone else, a reduction in TRS. Actually, there's an increase in TRS. So we're not starting very well the year, but we'll see what happens with the other expenses. The second meeting is going to be special education and athletics, as well as the capital program. Then on February 2nd, we're going to have the administrative budget. The administrative budget is the portion of the administration. The following week is the big week because we're going to talk about operations and maintenance, and given the situation with inflation, we're seeing some of our costs going out of control. And then the important one, obviously, is about the program budget. Is what are we going to be doing about the program budget with the Princeton plan and all the initiatives from Lisa and Margaret. That continues on the K-12 program on April 6th. Technology, we have our new director of technology that she will have to be immersed right away on what we're going to do about all our technology. On April 1st, we have our first publication of the legal notice about our annual budget. On April 6th, we'll have the final budget review with the board. On April 18, we're going to see is the day for the last day for the candidates petition. On April 19, the Board of Education has to approve the budget, and then we go through a lot of bureaucratic issues to set up everything. So we're ready for the third Tuesday in May, that's May 17. And if the budget is not approved by the community, then we will have to re-vote on June 21st. Any questions?
Questions about the schedule?
You can review it and we'll approve it in the next board meeting. Or you can ask questions in the next board meeting also.
Okay, thank you, Enrique. All right, so that brings us to our audience comment section on agenda items. Carmen, do we have anybody to comment on agenda items this evening? No? All right, then I'll save the instructions for later. Do we have any committee reports? Okay. That will bring us to board comments or new business.
I have a piece of board business. I spoke with you all, I sent you all an email earlier this week about this particular situation. What's happening is our Area 10 director for New York State School Boards Association was recently elected at the business meeting to become president of NISBA. Peggy Zerbe. And so she is being moved out. She cannot hold two positions, obviously, and we need to nominate some people to fill her place. And there is a board member from the Westchester City School Board Association, and she is also a Board of Ed member for the Southern Westchester BOCES, who would like to be nominated, who would like to run for this position. And she needs to have 5 in separate districts nominate her. And this just allows her name to be put on the ballot. And then we will have the opportunity of voting between all the different nominees who are nominated and make the determination from there. That'll probably happen in early January or possibly mid-December. So the thing I'd like to propose is that we nominate Cheryl Brady to be the Area 10 Director for NISBA. And what we would do is just write a letter to that effect that our district would like to nominate her for this position. I have worked with her a little bit over the years through my work with Westchester Putnam School Board Association. I think she would be a good addition in this particular role. And she has my support. But we need to decide as a board if we want to join and nominate her officially.
So it sounds like it's kind of like when we get our signatures together so that we can be put on the ballot. So we're not saying we're going to vote for this particular person at this point, just that she should be on the ballot. Does anybody have any questions for Lisa about this? I guess we have to vote on this, right? Yeah. Can I get a motion to approve Cheryl Brady's nomination?
So moved.
Can I get a second? Very good. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Anybody else have any comments or new business? Before we move on to audience comments, I just want to acknowledge that the teachers are here again this evening. Welcome to support their union position. We have had several meetings between the HHEA and the district trying to come to a mutually agreed upon contract agreement. Unfortunately, in spite of the several meetings we've had, we have not come to a mutually satisfactory agreement as of yet, as you can tell by the signs in our audience. We are continuing to meet, and hopefully we will be able to see eye to eye sometime in the near future. So thank you for coming out again. That brings us to our audience comments on non-agenda items. We have 2 people tonight? Okay, so let me read my very long public comment introduction. Because we feel community engagement is important, the Hendrick Hudson Board of Education welcomes public comment during this portion of the meeting. Please note that the public comment period is not designed to be a discussion. The board is here to listen. Please do not expect the board to respond to your concerns and questions this evening. This is because the board trustees and the superintendent take your comments seriously and want to have sufficient time to thoroughly process your comments and to research issues if need be. We will consider your comments as we deliberate at future meetings, or we'll have the proper staff member follow up with you at a later date as appropriate. To maintain an orderly meeting, the board has allotted 15 minutes for each public comments period, which may be extended by board consensus. Guidelines for those wishing to address the board are as follows. Each speaker should have signed in with the district clerk prior to the public comment section and will be called in the order in which they have signed up. We would ask that groups designate one individual to speak on their behalf. It is not permitted to cede your time to another speaker. When called, please step up to the podium and begin by stating your name and affiliation if applicable. Letters, petitions, or other written material should be handed to the district clerk prior to your comments. All comments must be directed to the board. Each speaker is permitted 3 minutes for their comments and must be recognized by the board president. The board vice president will be timing comments. Lisa will give a 30-second warning to the speaker with a yellow card and indicate when the speaker's time is finished with a red card. The board may limit repetitive comments in order to give time to participants wishing to speak on varied topics, as well as to maintain meeting efficiency. Although we take personnel concerns and individual student matters very seriously, the board is not permitted to address these in open session as per state and federal privacy laws. We would ask that we use appropriate administrative channels for these items. The board expects comments to be made without interference from the audience and in a civil manner so that our meeting can serve as a model of appropriate civil discourse for our students. In the unlikely event that the meeting becomes unruly, the board may recess the meeting until order can be restored. Please remember, if you prefer not to participate in the public comments portion of the meeting, written comments to the Board of Education may be submitted in lieu of speaking. Please see the agenda or the district website for contact information. We will now begin our public comment period on non-agenda items only. Carmen, who's the first speaker?
Our first speaker is Mary Hillman.
Mary Hellman?
Good evening, Mary Evan Hillman. I am a mother of 2 children, elementary school aged in the district. My children love school. They love school because of their teachers, okay, and maybe because of recess too. But here's what I'm afraid of, morale. No matter how professional I've seen the teachers in this district to be during the past 3 years, coincidentally when my children became school age, feeling disrespected and disheartened weighs on you like the big heavyweight championship belt that most of these caring human beings deserve. Latest educational research on morale talks about the pandemic. Other research mentions teacher morale and student achievement. The teachers working while their contract expired over 850 days ago in and through a pandemic, no matter how professional they want to be, there's no hiding that morale has to be low in this district. And no carrot being thrown out to families as a hope or dream is going to change it. It's eventually going to affect our children. While we look to strategic planning and grade banding, please focus on ensuring the heart of our district is still pumping. Thank you.
Look forward to having a mutually agreed upon contract. Thank you. Who's our next speaker, please?
Our next speaker is Carson Jacobs.
Good evening, everybody. And I'd like to first say thank you to all you guys on the board. I see the anguish on your face. I was here 2 weeks ago. This is not an easy time right now for you guys. I went through two contract negotiations with the HHEA, and it was not an easy task. But when I'm here as a taxpayer tonight, okay, so my concern is this: what is a fair contract? I see all these signs on my neighbors' properties. What is fair? Are we asking for 10% raise? Because the taxpayers can't hold that anymore. All right, so I'm asking, open up. I understand with the Tribal Act, we cannot, personnel issues we can't talk about. But what is a fair contract? Put it on the table, full transparency. Let the taxpayers know what's going on. What is fair? Is it negotiation rights? Is it management rights? Are you guys looking, is it the school district looking for management rights back? Or is it money? But you know what? They're putting the pressure. This parent comes up here and talks, but she has 2 kids. I had 4 kids come to the district. I have no one in the district anymore. And I'm faced paying increased taxes. All right? And it's tough. And you know what? What is a fair contract? What do these guys want? Is it the district that's not giving it to them? Or is it teachers being unrealistic in what they're looking for? Because I was just down at my grandson's school, and the teachers in Texas make 1/3 of what we pay these teachers here if you go see through New York. And they should be thankful. I see this gentleman's sign right here. Ridiculous. Do we still have steps and lanes? There's people they're still getting raises. The taxpayers don't understand this, okay? There's still taxes. People are still getting raises in this district without it happening. So what is a fair contract? That's what I'm asking right now. What would be considered a fair contract so the taxpayers are not going to be burdened anymore? That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Carson.
Yeah, okay.
There were just the 2 this evening, correct? Yeah. Okay, so that brings us to the end of our audience comment section, and that brings us to the end of our meeting. Can I have a motion to close the meeting, please? Can I get a second? All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Our next meeting will be December 1st